Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the weekly MMA Cycles Market Update. This is Gianni DePoce, your host, and I'm joined this week by the one and only Ray Merriman. Ray, welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Johnny. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I hope you're doing fine too.
Indeed, and you really picked an auspicious day to join me, so I'm a little excited about it because it's Fed Day. So the Fed did not raise any interest rates in this meeting, but it sounds like what Fed Chair Powell is saying now is that we could have a situation where rates are higher for longer. So from a geocosmic standpoint, what's your take on that? Do you see a situation where the Fed could start cutting rates sooner than expected, or even perhaps even start hiking them more aggressively than expected?
I think they're just going to pause. I think they're going to stay on pause for a while. Jupiter's in Taurus. Taurus doesn't like to go to extremes, although it's coming toward Uranus in April, so there could be some extremes there. But really, between now and let's say March, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of changes with Fed policy. I think they're basically watch the data and decide that they need more data to make any kind of change.
Fantastic. Let me go ahead and share my screen here and start looking at some charts. Start off by looking at the Dow. We were up today. We are in the time band for a low to unfold, at least in the S&P and the NASDAQ. But, after Fed Chair Powell started speaking, the rally started to fade. Earlier this week, we started off with Venus square Jupiter, and then earlier this week, we also had Sun opposite Neptune tomorrow, Sun trine Pluto. So Ray, what's your take on what's happening in stocks right now? Is the Fed going to crash this thing, or are the geocosmics supportive of some sideways price action here?
Well, you see that low we had back there in late August. That happened to be right on our three-star critical reversal day. And it was also in the time band for primary cycle bottom. You can see that's the second primary cycle since the lows of last October. So we're in the third primary cycle, and third phases are very, very important. When the market is bullish, you'll oftentimes see the third phase go up and test the high of the second phase. And so I'm still expecting that. And as I look at this chart, I think that low we had yesterday, Sun square Neptune, also a two-star critical reversal date, I think that was a trading cycle low. And I think the next key is to take out that, 35,091 high we had on September 1st. I think that's the next target we have. And then we'll see. I'm looking at Mars in Libra, which is in effect now through October 11th. And especially when the Mars in Libra is going to conjunct the Jupiter Neptune in the New York Stock Exchange chart, which will be, it's actually starting next week through October 10th. If we're making a high then, we're near that high of August 1st, I think we got to be very, very careful, because in the third phase, you can get a good rally, but the decline that happens in that third phase tends to be the most severe ball. So I'm basically the opinion that we got a rally coming up still, but following that, we're going to have maybe the steepest decline of the year.
Very good. Let's go ahead and take a look at the NASDAQ, because, we have a market environment where tech represents the biggest sector in the S&P. NASDAQ is a predominantly tech-based index. Next week, we have Venus square Uranus on the 29th of September. But, you're talking about how some of our cycle studies are indicating, some increased downside risks in the month ahead, or in the months ahead, rather. And, just from a market movement standpoint, I think seeing the NASDAQ underperform here vindicates that. You usually don't see the NASDAQ start to underperform until you get into those late stages of those cycles. So I think you make a strong point there, Ray, that, that we could see some more upside, but with the caveat that downside risks are also simultaneously rising, and that, it could happen fast. So what's your take on the NASDAQ and tech overall?
Well, looking at this chart again, it looks like that Sun Neptune of yesterday, and you're in the time band here for reversal, and it looks like it was coming down into that. So just based purely on geocosmics, with maybe some support from the trading cycle, the 2 to 4 week trading cycle, it seems like we're in a period where we get a bounce up here too. I'm also very concerned about the NASDAQ, probably more concerned about the NASDAQ when the down move happens after Mars and Libra, because as Mars goes in Scorpio, it is going to conjunct the sun. And that 25-month aspect is also going to be going in opposition to Uranus, which rules this market. So if there is a downdraft coming up in October and especially November, when that Sun-Mars opposite Uranus and Jupiter take place, it would seem to be most severe then, and the NASDAQ could be hit the hardest. In other words, it would have a greater percentage decline. I'm expecting an 8 to 20% decline in most markets, but I think the NASDAQ may be the stronger one if indeed this plays out as I expect with the geocosmic conditions arising in October, November.
Very good. And do you want to look at the S&P? Do you have any additional takes on the S&P, or does that?
Yeah, let's take a look at the S&P for a second, because there's been a lot of questions about a call that we made the last time that had our interview, that we're looking for the S&P to retest that high, which is around 4,650, 4,700 area. And I think it's still possible. To me, this recent move down we had since September 1st is only a correction. It's not a thrust down, in my opinion, yet. If you start breaking much lower, certainly below that low of August 18th area, August 25th, you start breaking below that, yeah, it's in trouble. But so far, this looks just like a correction of the move up that started in late August and peaked in early September. This is just a correction. So I'm still in a bullish camp here and think that we could retest that highs again that we had August 1st.
I am with you on that. Ray, let's go ahead and jump over to gold. Look at GLD here. So we have the intraday price action. Nice rally here as the Fed is talking, but we are off of the highs of the day. So what's the update on gold? Obviously, Mars is in Libra, so we're looking for a low of significance to be complete in anticipation of a notable rally while Mars transits through Scorpio. So what's your take on gold? Is the bottom in, or are we still in a chop fest?
It's a good question, and typical of the Sun Neptune opposition. You got a little bit of a confusion here, in the sense that it could be one of two different scenarios. That low that you're pointing at right there, the first one you pointed at, if that's the primary bottom, then you already took out that low back here in what was that, later around August
17th. August.
Yeah, around our August period of our reversal. So you got a lower low, which would indicate you're going to get a lower high. However, that low you had in late August could have been an expanded primary cycle from going back in that low you had in March. And if it's an expanded, which means more than 21 weeks, that was 25 weeks. If that's an expanded primary cycle, then this could already be starting as the next, bull move up. The bull move is going to continue. And really, all you have to do is start taking out that high of a couple of weeks ago, which was what, 1980? You start going above there, and then it's pretty evident that this is a new primary cycle, not the end of an older one. And in that case, you could very well see the all-time highs tested again sometime by the end of November of this year. So if we take out 1980, I'm very bullish. If we don't take out 1980, we got one more push down here into, I would say, mid-October, and then we get a big move up. But in any event, I think the approach we want to take here is looking for buying opportunities going into mid-October, whether it makes a new low below that 1913 area, or it just goes back and tests that area. It doesn't matter. You're getting late in the primary cycle, or you already start a new primary cycle, and therefore we're going to be looking for opportunities to go along, I think.
Excellent. Let's jump over to Bitcoin, because some nice price action in the crypto market as of late. I've talked about this in some recent videos, but I have to say, Ray, I'm most intrigued by what's been happening in this space, especially since Bitcoin completed its 4-year cycle low back in November of 2022, whereas Ethereum completed its 4-year cycle low back in June of 2022. Now, we had a very important development in the sense that Bitcoin never took out this low from June 15th. But if we jump over to Ethereum real quick, we'll see that it did. So we have intermarket bullish divergence here. And I think it comes down to whether we had an expanded primary cycle in these markets, which I think is a pretty high possibility at this point. So more work is to be done to confirm the low, but I think that there are some positive developments here. So what's your take on what's going on in crypto? And I have to say, Ray, I am eagerly anticipating Venus square Uranus next week.
Yeah. Well, let's see, that's a similar situation as the stock market, or not stock, as the gold market is.
Yeah.
There's two different ways you can look at that. That low we had a week or so ago is either a long primary cycle bottom, in which case this market's on its way up. You know, it's gonna go back up above that 30,000 mark again and see that high of what was that in July?
Yeah.
Or that's just the first phase of three phases going down to the 16-month cycle low, which is, you know, not due until early next year.
Yeah.
I'm of the more bullish camp. I like the idea that these lows they're not massive sell-offs. You know, they just peak to new lows, they just eke out new lows and they bounce back up again. But they can't seem to take out the highs of previous cycles. So you got a lot of resistance there around that 28,000, 28,500. You start getting above there, and then I become much more convinced that that was the primary bottom. You're back up, you're on your way back up of 30,000, maybe 35 or 40,000 in the next primary cycle. So I'm cautiously bullish, been cautiously bullish, as long as we stay above 24,000. But it's, you know, I've had my doubts here because you keep eking out new lows. But yet my bias still is cautiously bullish, looking for this to take out 28,000 to confirm my bias.
All right, let's jump over to the bond market real quick. We'll take a look at TLT, long-term treasuries. Obviously, we're entering, well, we are in the time band now for a 6-year low in bonds, but you know, bond markets are still grappling with inflation. So what's your update on bonds, Ray? Are we going to see a rally, or you know, is the Fed still going to continue to put pressure on this market?
Well, again, you had a secondary bottom there with this Sun Neptune. That's a good sign you're going to get a rally. Now the question is, can that rally take out that bearish island reversal that you had at the high there?
Yeah.
I think it could, but you know, I'm not entirely convinced yet. I got to see how strong that rally is, but I do like the fact that at least on the short term, the low of early this week or late last week, under this critical reversal date that we follow so close with our geocosmics, implies that we got at least a 3 to 8 day rally and maybe much stronger. You know, this low that we had last week, we don't have any major, well, we got a major aspect coming up September 29th, as you mentioned, Venus square Uranus. Yeah. I think at that point, you know, if it's testing that high, that could be another sell. But I think for right now, we should be on the long side as short-term traders until we get into that, you know, the last week of September.
All right, and last but certainly not least, let's take a look at crude oil, which you know, over the weekend during MMTA, you and I were having a conversation about some potentially different primary cycle labels, and I think the last agreed upon primary cycle low, which isn't reflected in this because we're looking at the ETF instead of the spot price, was on May 4th in the cash crude oil market. But if that was the low, then we're 20 weeks into an older primary cycle. The only bullish scenario I see for crude oil right now is if this low on August 23rd, 24th was the primary cycle low. But I got to say, Ray, the price action of today sure does seem like it's in an older primary cycle, especially coming out of Sun opposite Neptune yesterday. So are you still looking for a 2 to 5 week corrective decline in the energy market?
I am. Yes, you had the Sun opposite Neptune, as you mentioned. You have Venus square Jupiter, and those are the two brewers, Venus, Jupiter, of crude oil. And you got the top there right on time. So at the very least, that's a major cycle crest, which means we go down what, 3 to 8 days. Yeah. But I think it's an older primary cycle, and I think we maybe go back down right where you had that line there. Yeah, right around there, right around that gap area. I'd like to see that happen in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Then I think we got another big rally coming up in crude oil. So I think this is an older primary cycle. 2 to 3 week drop, maybe 2 to 5 weeks, but probably 2 to 3 weeks, another push up, just as you mentioned. The alternative is that is just a major cycle, the first major cycle. We only get a modest decline here. and then we take off again higher in the new primary cycle. But right now, my preferred outlook is that was the primary cycle top, and I'm looking for a 2 to 5 week decline. And by the way, when you get primary cycle tops in bull markets, if you got the guts, if you got the courage to go short, these are the best times to go short, because the market goes down in elevators. It goes down very fast, very quickly, and very steeply. But you got to be very adept and very nimble, because when you're going against the trend, that decline, it may be sharp, but it can suddenly turn too. So you got to take your profits quickly. So if you're going short at this point, you can't be short for too long, because you're going against the trend. Right. You got to understand, where is your profit potential. Start taking your first profit point when you get there. Get at least a third of positions off. And when you reach your price target, get out of everything and get ready to go long. And you want to stay with the trend. You don't want to be against the trend for long.
Very good. Well, Ray, that's all the time we have to review charts today. Just a couple of announcements I want to share with viewers. The first one is that the monthly edition of the ETF report will be published next Wednesday, the 27th of September. And then, since you're here, Ray, I do want to talk about forecasts and as well as some other changes with respect to analysts on the monthly cycles report. So let's start off with the forecast. We're obviously in the pre-ordering season, right? So get your forecast book now, right?
Start ordering it now, because once we get to into October, the special discount rates for the forecast book and subscriptions to our cycles reports, whether the monthly, daily, or weekly, the best time of the year to buy is during this forecast pre-publication season. We have our best deals then. So yeah, order now. We also decide how many books to actually print, hard copies, based on the pre-orders that we get. So, if you don't order in time, then those books always sell out. We always order 20% more than have been pre-ordered. And 6 of the last 9 years now, they have sold out. The last couple of years have sold out. So you want to order that quickly. Now, since this is forecast season, it seems like we get into increasingly more confusing periods about what's really happening in the long term. These books become more and more critical for investors. And of course, I'm interested in the investment approach, the long-term approach. So I'm taking special times off this year from doing the daily, the weekly, and monthly analysis, so I can focus on the yearly, the long-term outlook for that. So you'll see that in the MMA cycles report, the one issue just came out this week. In fact, it came out yesterday. We've got our top MMTA graduates analyzing the markets. They're going to do that for the next couple months at least. Johnny, you're doing the financials. Ulrich is doing the Euro. That's Ulrich Aspergen, who's going to be your guest next week. Wyatt is going to be doing soybeans. Puyan is doing metals and crude oil. Matthew Kaiser is doing copper. So you get the top analysts, the top market timers that I personally train, and who I can recommend highly, are not only very talented, but very exciting people, very exciting analysts. They are the future of market timing, this whole movement that we started several years ago. And I'm very proud to be their mentors and get them to this point. And I think they're going to take this study much further than I've taken it. So I'm really excited about this. I will continue being involved. I'll be monitoring, I'll be overseeing their analysis on the weekly and the monthly reports. I'll continue writing the introduction, giving my views briefly on each of those. So I'm still involved. I'm just not going to be doing the daily grind, the weekly grind of doing the analysis. I'm very focused right now on the long-term approach. And what I see is fantastic trading markets coming up in 2024 with Jupiter conjunct Uranus. The whole trading plan for next year is going to center around that Jupiter conjunct Uranus in Taurus, and then Jupiter square Saturn. It's very evident to me what's likely to happen, but I want to share that with you because I think these are outstanding investment and trading opportunities coming up. So stay tuned and place your order now for forecast for 2024 before it's too late.
Excellent, Ray. Thank you so much for joining me this week. And as you mentioned, Ulrich Aspergen will be joining us next week. So any final words before we wrap it up here?
Well, my final words would be, you know, continue looking for great trading opportunities. I think what you've got coming up in October, November are going to be one of the best trading markets of this year if you catch it properly, because it's going to be, you know, extremely volatile. So great short-term trading opportunities coming up. Save your cash for that time. Don't be too heavily invested till we get to middle October or so, because we got some excellent opportunities in the gold market, and I think also in some other markets. So keep your powder dry and be ready to be involved in late October and November.
All right, very good. Thank you, Ray, and everyone. You can find all of our work reports and other products at www.mmacycles.com. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you same time, same place next week.